Hello everyone, this is an FCI 7200 fire alarm control panel. These were first introduced in 1993 and were capable of both conventional and adjustable monitoring points. The 7200 series was a modular design allowing for a wide variety of applications, and also had advanced features such as voice evacuation and hazard release and suppression. The 7200 was a successor to the FCI-D series, one of FCI's first adjustable panels, which were introduced in the late 1980s and used the Fenwal adjustable protocol. In 1991, the FCI-D-A was introduced, which uses System Center's CLIP protocol, which the 7200 also uses. There was also an FCI-D-X model that allowed multiple FCI-D panels to network to each other. The 7200 would enhance the FCI-D's original features with its modular design and larger degree of expansion. So let's jump right into this. Let's conduct a demonstration on the 7200 Micro, the smallest of the 7200 panels. Got a couple devices here on the table. For ignition devices, we have an MS7A pull station, an ASD PL2F smoke detector, an MS6 pull station connected to this AMM 2IF monitor module. And for signals, we have a Wheelock RSS and a Wheelock MT SLM, not LSM. The SLM strobe is sync capable, so it should synchronize with this RSS strobe. And the tone is set to march time horn. Both the detector and the MS7A will initiate a fire alarm condition, while the AMM module will indicate a supervisory condition. And both NACs on the 7200 Micro are set to continuous. So let's begin. Alright, so the strobes took a second to synchronize, and that's because the sync module back there, that's actually a simplex sync module. It takes a few seconds to warm up because this panel does not have built-in sync. And the sound switch on the keypad here doesn't really work, so I had to use the one inside the panel. So now, let's re-alarm with the smoke detector. It's pretty quiet, but there is an internal piezo on this panel. It's actually on the power supply, and it's not particularly loud. The keypad can have its own piezo, but since this is a local keypad, it doesn't have one of those. So we'll clear out the detector and reset the pull station, and then we can reset the system. I'll shut the door for this. There we go, back to normal. Real quick, we can test this monitor module in the supervisory condition. It's not latching, so once the pulsation resets, it clears. Should be able to hear the piezo now. There we go. Compared to other panels that use System Center's CLIP protocol, like the Notifier AFP200 or the Firelight MS9200, the 7200 seems to have a particularly long response time. That may be attributed to the slow polling speed of all the devices on the SLC loop. On a Notifier or a Firelight panel, these devices will be polling a lot faster, which also means more times to detect an alarm condition. Whether this is done intentionally or is just a consequence of the processing on the SLC cards is not really known, although this isn't the slowest panel either. The Faraday MPC 1000 also uses clip, and that one is a lot slower than this panel. Even the Notifier AM2020, which is notorious for being quite slow, has a faster pulling time than this panel. A lot of the delay on the AM2020 is attributed to the transponders. There's a lot of delay from the transponder itself, and then there's delays from communicating that back to the main control card. The 7200 also has transponders, and it seems like the delay for those is similar to that on the 2020. So while it may be a particularly slow addressable panel, it's definitely not the slowest I've seen. The 7200 has several different cabinet sizes. The 7200 Micro is the smallest cabinet size, Cab A. The full-size cabinets are B, C, and D. There is also a special cabinet for use for the FireVac voice evacuation system. The B, C, and D are considered the full-size cabinets, and the only difference between those is the C and D cabinets have more space for cards. Here's the inside of a 7200 Micro. Unlike the full-size models, the Micro tends to follow the same overall card layout and design, with the keypad on top, the power supply behind it, followed with the main system card, and a SLC or releasing card on the bottom. At the forefront of all 7200 panels is the SCU Status Control Unit. This is the panel's main CPU, and it stores the configuration. It also has a couple of LED indicators, some switches, and basic operator controls. There's also a programming switch with a diagnostic display to perform some very basic programming functions on the system. On the right is a terminal block containing some outputs. At the top is a city circuit, followed by a trouble, alarm relay, and 2 signal circuits. There's various jumpers on the SCU that can be used to configure the board, including 2 jumpers that sets both signal circuits as coded or non-coded. The signal coding is determined in the programming software and can be temporal or march time. Behind these batteries is an ALU or analog loop unit. It contains 2 SLC loops for initiating and output devices. A single ALU can have a maximum of 394 devices, including 198 detectors and 196 modules. The 99th module address on both SLC loops is reserved for a module, indicating an end of line on a Class A circuit. This is a feature unique to FCI clip systems and is not used elsewhere. At the top is a KDU keypad display unit. It contains an LCD, some operator buttons, a small keypad, and additional LED indicators. This component is not required in all 7200 systems, although a vast majority do include at least 1 KDU on the system. The only times a KDU may not be present is on very simple, fully conventional systems. Here's the default display on the KDU. The top row can be customized in programming. Otherwise, it displays the current time and date. This night text indicates the operating mode of the system. Many adjustable panels have a dedicated day and night modes, which can affect detector sensitivity and how outputs and some other components may behave depending on the day and night times as defined in programming. This is a local KDU, but KDUs can also be used as a remote nunciator in remote locations. These remote KDUs will often feature a built-in piezo, while local ones do not. Behind the KDU is a switching power supply unit, or SPSU. This powers all the system components and provides additional auxiliary power for remote KDUs and any other outputs. As mentioned earlier, it also contains a built-in piezo for the panel. Full-size 7200s have a slightly different power supply called the SPSU-V. It's oriented vertically on the left side of the cabinet. It has its own built-in piezo as well, but it also has LED indicators which are not present on the regular SPSU used on the 7200 micros. Some 7200 micro panels have some modified versions of the SCU and ALU cards which lack any LED indicators or switches, making the KDU the only source for operator controls and indicators. But as seen here, the regular SCU and ALU cards work just fine in a regular 7200 micro, and it seems that regardless of the variant, all of the cards are universal across all 7200 panels. There are many different cards that could be installed on the 7200 panel, especially on the full-size cabinets. There was the dual signal unit, DSU, which adds 2 additional signal circuits. There is also the quad relay unit, QRU, and high power relay unit, HRU, both of which add 4 relays to the system. For conventional zones, there is the 8-zone unit, EZU, quad zone unit, QZU, and sprinkler supervisor unit, SSU, which was used in Canada. The IDU was a special addressable SLC card that was used to retrofit FCID devices onto a 7200 system. For releasing applications, there was the Releasing Device Unit, or RDU, and there was a Distributed Intelligence Unit, or DIU, which controlled its own cards and basically acted as a remote transponder. There are many other cards that aren't listed here, including those used on the voice systems. More than a dozen of these cards can be added to a single 7200 panel, and they're really only limited by space and power consumption. In terms of programming a 7200 panel, most of this occurs on a computer-based programming software. There is next to no programming options from the front panel outside of AutoConfigure. AutoConfigure just wipes the existing configuration and creates a new one by scanning for all the cards connected to the SCU, as well as searching for any devices on the addressable loop cards, including the ALU and IDU. This works in a pinch, but any other programming changes have to be done on the software. So that concludes this overview of the FCI 7200 fire alarm control panel. These were ultimately phased out in the mid-2000s with the release of the E3 series, as well as the merging of Gamewell and FCI by Honeywell. Nowadays, these panels are generally uncommon and are slowly getting replaced with newer systems. What it lacks in advanced complexity, it makes up for with its modular construction, allowing a greater degree of flexibility in its design. If you do manage to acquire one of these panels, they can be auto-configured, but to get the best out of this panel's capabilities, you should try and acquire the panel's programming software if possible. While kinda slow, the 7200 is one of the lesser known and more unique fire alarm control panels as opposed to the more common notifier and firelight panels of the time period. In any case, if you have any questions or comments on the 7200, feel free to post them below. But until next time, have a nice day.